Hey there, Neddy here. Welcome or welcome back to my YouTube channel. Up until last month, my days mainly consisted of working on my final art school graduation project, the Nautical Path. In this video, I want to share that project as well as the creative process that went on behind the scenes to create the final results. So if you have ever been curious on how a concept art portfolio for art school comes together, from conceptualizing to creating the final graduation portfolio, then hopefully this video can provide you a little glimpse into that world. If you're new here, hi, hello. I'm a recent art school graduate from Sin Studio Montreal's Concept Art Diploma program. The entire journey itself was a huge learning experience full of ups and lots of downs. And I'll be honest, at some point during the entire process, I actually had so much doubt and didn't think that I would actually finish my portfolio on time or even complete the program. Before we jump into the final portfolio, let's start with a bit of context about the program. The program lasted 18 months, divided up into 6 terms, and the goal for the program was to have a final concept art portfolio by the end of term 6. The first 3 terms focused on art fundamental topics like perspective, anatomy. Then in term 3, we were given a general overview of deliverables for our graduation projects. We then spent the final 3 terms, which is term 4, 5, and 6, working on and developing concept art for our IP to include in our portfolio. For the project, we had to reimagine an existing story and create concept art for it as if it were being made into a movie or video game. We are given the freedom to change up the time, historical setting, genre. However, we had to stick to the general plot of the story and follow all the basic story beats. Basically, the main goal was to keep the original story recognizable at its core while adding your own twist, finesse, and unique personality to it. As for the story itself, we were given 5 options to choose from. Then we had to provide 3 different IP directions, which we then pitched in front of the entire class and 3 instructors. The story options were The Mask of Zorro, Anastasia, Labyrinth, The Story of Orpheus and Eurydice, and lastly, iRobots. Honestly, I remember when they first mentioned all 5, I instantly deleted iRobots and The Mask of Zorro, and I just knew it had to be between Orpheus and Eurydice, Anastasia, and the Labyrinth because, coming up with each story direction came naturally to me because I really enjoy making up stories and building worlds. So best believe this was the part I was most excited about. I won't go into too much details on each of the different directions I pitched, simply because that would take up way too much time in this video. So I'm only going to focus on my final choice. However, if you're interested in reading more about the other 2 directions, I'm gonna leave the Google slide link down below if you're interested in reading more on them. For the rest of term 3, we had a class called Originality in Design, where we focused on building our mood board and collecting references for our IP. We created an art bible which included things like visual direction, tone, design language, style guides, color palettes, in order to keep the project consistent and feel cohesive. For my project, I put a lot of inspiration from ancient Greek, nautical elements, corals, and sea creatures. I also drew a lot of inspiration from bright iridescent colors and bioluminescent sea life. I felt that would make it look a bit more otherworldly and fantastical. I also added elements like shiny sea stones, pearls, and gold because I wanted the world to feel regal and elegant. I'm naturally drawn to pretty things, so I wanted to make everything as beautiful and shiny as I could, with a slightly moody undertone. Also, I really just love pearls and shiny stuff, hence my accessorizing. Sometimes the reasons behind why I do things is really not that deep. So term 4 began and we jumped straight into creating concept art for our IP. By now, I had a decent idea of all the work I wanted to create for the project. I gathered all my references and using Miller Notes, I created a dedicated board to organize all my plans, ideas, and inspirations. By the way, this video is not sponsored by Miller Notes. However, if you're watching this Miller Notes, I'm always open to collaborating, okay? Anyways, here's a quick look into my Miller Note board. It did change and evolve up until this point, but it was extremely helpful to have this as a reference point for all my resources. But unfortunately, even with all this intense planning, I couldn't prevent the unforeseen hurdles that I was about to face for the next 3 terms. Now, this is a part of the video where I'm going to be extremely vulnerable and honest with you all. You see, at the start of the entire project, I was genuinely excited. Before attending Sin Studio, I would constantly look through their websites and admire all the graduation portfolios from past students. In fact, it was one of the core reasons I wanted to attend Sin, to make my own IP and world and build a rich story and project that feels concise and, inspires others. So of course I was excited. I had originally planned to go beyond the specific requirements and create a bunch of characters, props, and environments for my world. However, after spending the entire of term 4 struggling to make any progress with any of my concepts, be it characters, props, or environments, I quickly came to the realization that I had severely underestimated my time, skills, and current mental health states. If you watched the video where I shared my 1-year art school experience, then you're already aware of how much I struggled with my mental health. And around this time was when it kind of peaked, like really peak. Probably due to the immense pressure that I put on myself to create a perfect industry standard portfolio so that there would at least be the slightest hope of finding work after graduating in the slowly crumbling art industry that I always dreamed to be a part of. The pressure I put on myself led to me overly criticizing and not creating any work that I felt was good enough to move forward with. Since I was always starting over and over for no apparent reason, and this of course made me feel like I was running out of time when the rest of my classmates were moving on to their next work, and it felt like I was still running around on this hamster wheel trying to find the perfect design, which eventually made me stress from the imposter syndrome to make work just as good as theirs, adding to the initial pressure, and the cycle continues. I honestly felt like I was at my lowest. And at this point, I actually believed that I wouldn't be able to complete my portfolio on time and I might have to drop out of the program. Yeah, it was tough. It was really tough. But I talked more about my mental health and how I overcame this mindset in my previous video. So I do recommend watching that as well. I have it linked in the description. Because it was thanks to what I learned in that video that I was finally able to kind of pull myself out of that mindset. Term 5 came along and I decided to go back to the drawing board, reevaluate my skills, my time, my focus, and decided to severely cut down my workload as well as all the expectations I originally had for the project. At this point, I was mainly just trying to focus on having a complete and final portfolio by the end of the program, whether the project lived up to my expectations or not. The most important thing I kept reminding myself here was I needed to keep making progress and moving forward. And that's exactly what happened. I started making little progress, and even though I did hit a few roadblocks and felt like I was way behind on the rest of my classmates progress-wise, I tried my best to stay focused and not let that overwhelming feeling stop me from doing what I had to do. Sometimes I would stay overnight at school just so I could focus and meet my deadlines. As time passed on and I continued to push through, I was somehow miraculously able to finish my portfolio right before graduation. Like, literally right before graduation. I was working on the final touch-ups in the Uber to the graduation events. Yeah, it was truly a miracle. It was a miracle. But once I was done, it felt so good to stand amongst my peers on that day and present my portfolio to everyone who came for the event. And now, with all that done and said, I want to share that portfolio with you. After the death of his lover, Orpheus, a young musician, embarks on a journey across the 7 seas to retrieve the 7 shattered fragments of her soul and bring her back to life. You play as Orpheus, blessed with the powers bestowed upon him by the god of the sea. But beware, as this long and unforgiving quest will test your resolve and challenge the deepest parts of human nature. The story begins with our main character Orpheus and to his left, his lover Eurydice. I designed both characters with a few key things in mind. First off, I wanted them to look harmonious together, making them feel like a pair. I also aimed to use colors unique to each character, but still have the colors slightly similar, enhancing their idea of unity. For this project, I chose not to restrict myself to historical accuracy, since that was one of the things that I struggled with originally when coming up with ideas. Rather, I took a more creative and artistic approach to their garments. After all, it's all set in a fantasy world. So let's start out with Orpheus. For his character, I aimed to have a heroic vibe. I wanted to keep his design a lot more grounded compared to the rest of the fantastical elements in the project. Even though his appearance is simple, he stands out as being different in this world. I envisioned a character that strikes a balance between bold and heroic, while also being soft and charming enough to showcase his gentler side. But honestly, he was a perfect excuse for me to draw beautiful, handsome men because I'm just a girl. That's it. That's my excuse. I'm just a girl. Unlike Orpheus, however, Eurydice's design was a bit more challenging. I wanted her to feel soft and elegant, but after multiple explorations, I hit a roadblock when it came to translating her design into her soul form, which we'll see shortly. So I decided to go back to the drawing board and redesign her concept, this time keeping the shape language of her soul form in mind. I believe I made the right decision to do so, as her overall design now feels a lot more thoughtful and intentional, aligning with my original depictions and ideas for her character. For her personality, I explored a range from innocent to daring, confident and elegant, and I feel I found a good middle point with her final design. So as I mentioned, this is a retelling of Orpheus and Eurydice. So I did add a bit of a twist to the story. In this retelling, humans worship the ocean, they worship water, and after death, rather than being buried, their bodies are given back and returned to the ocean, making them become one with water. I imagine that their soul fragments are then divided and sent across the 7 seas. In this story, to bring Eurydice back to life, Orpheus must collect all 7 fragments of her soul, and her soul form is a physical manifestation of that fragment. For her soul form, I tried to mirror the design of her original form, but exaggerate and push the silhouettes further, while also incorporating oceanic elements like corals and pearls to enhance that fantastical feel. I aim to strike a perfect balance between making her feel ghostly, yet ethereal and beautiful. I explored 3 main directions and settled on the final design. I like the idea for her original design to be bottom heavy, resembling a mermaid tail, so I exaggerated the shape language to reflect that even more. In the original story, Orpheus goes to Hades for help. However, for my IP, rather than going to Hades, I imagine Orpheus approaches an entity who they call the god of the sea. Here we have an illustration titled The Plea. It depicts the moment in which Orpheus cries out to the god of the sea, begging him for help to bring back his beloved, who then provides him with special magical tools to help him along his quest. I felt this illustration was a great way to capture the overall tone and mood of the story. For no reason but my own personal indulgence, I also put on my writer's hat and wrote a little poem to accompany it, as cheesy as it may be. To summon the god, you must provide a sacrifice or show resolve, and he will only answer if he deems you worthy. In this case, Orpheus sings a song on his lyre, to which his cry is heard. The soul vessel is the item the player or Orpheus uses to collect all the fragments. Since it came from the sea, I wanted to incorporate those oceanic elements. For the vessel itself, I draw a lot of inspiration from ancient Greek patterns and pottery. I also incorporated kintsugi as a motif to visually represent the idea of gathering broken fragments from a piece and putting them together to become one again. Orpheus's bow was also crafted by the god of the sea. by transforming his lyre, which in this case can be said to be the physical manifestation of his sacrifice, and transforming it into a magical weapon to aid him against future foes. For the bow, however, rather than pulling elements from the ocean and the sea, I focused on translating and mirroring the shape language of his lyre into the bow's design, so it looks like it was indeed once the lyre itself. Painting and designing the concepts for the aqua arrow as well was also pretty fun. Lastly, we have the Forsaken. The Forsaken is my own interpretation of mermaids and sirens in their world. In this story, I imagine that they were once regular humans who were punished and banished to death at sea. Rather than being a proper burial and becoming one with the water, they morph and change into this horrific sea creature. Just like regular sirens, I still wanted them to be charming and enchanting. To strike a good balance between beautiful and fearsome, I chose to make them appear human-like at first glance. I imagined their prey would only see them from the top above until their true form is revealed, hiding under the facade. Her design also came naturally to me, and I am pretty pleased with the final results. Now, I'll be honest again. Even though I did technically complete this project on time, I am not a huge fan of the final portfolio. In fact, to be honest, I straight up hate it. I personally feel that it's lacking a lot more intentionality, design, and unique creative ideas. As I mentioned, after all my mental meltdowns, I mainly focused on just having a final project. So I had to cut out all my original ideas that I had for the portfolio, which as a result, in my opinion, made it fall flat. Then again, that isn't to say that this portfolio is necessarily bad, and I'm also not pity fishing, let's just make that clear. It just simply didn't live up to my expectations. I'm pretty much also sure that a lot of my frustrations towards the project and portfolio heavily stems from the constant stress and anxiety I had while working on it. And I'm sure if I look back on this a little into the future, I won't feel as strong negative emotions towards it as I currently do right now. That being said, I'm still glad I was able to push through and actually finish it and actually complete the program, even with all the difficulties and struggles that I faced. So if you're currently in a position where you feel stuck and feel like you are not going to accomplish your goals, let me be a reminder that you can do it as long as you keep moving forward. I know it sounds cheesy, but honestly, trust me, I'm a physical manifestation of that. If you want to see a close-up of this portfolio, I've decided to upload it to the rookies for the 2024 Rookie Awards. I'll have that linked in the description, as well as a link to my Milano board. I plan on making an art school/art students Q&A video very soon. So if you have any questions regarding my portfolio, my art school experience, Sin Studio, any arts related questions in general, please leave them down below in the comments and I will look through them and try my best to answer them in the video. Before I go, I want to say a huge thank you to all my instructors, classmates, family members, friends for constantly supporting and encouraging me during this entire process. Attending the program was truly an honorable experience, and I am so glad I was able to push through and see it to the end. All this wouldn't have been possible without all of you encouraging me and God on my side. I still have so much to learn, and now that I'm done with art school, I can't wait to get back to my self-study and practice. I'm excited to grow and continue improving my skills. So if you want to join me on this adventure, do consider subscribing if you haven't yet, and until then, I'll see you in the next one.